is, hold on 1 second, I want to fix. Trying to catch. Yeah. Try to catch evenly with both sides. That's it. Now I got it. Sorry, I should have done the adjustments before, but I'm moving over here. Okay. All right, it's a little better now. My center flames. Yes, now I'm good. L'chaim. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is this Parsha in my life class for Parshas Mishpatim. Okay, so Israel has been on everybody's minds this year, and the Promised Land, Israel, the Promised Land, the ultimate jewel of lands. The promise that God made to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to your children I will give the land. So we find that from already the very beginning, you can see how taking possession of this land is not the easiest thing. Everything godly comes with challenge. The godlier something is, the more challenge there is. So in this week's Torah portion, Parshas Mishpatim, although most of the Torah portion is all about the law, introducing all the various different laws, financials, matters between people, laws pertaining to damaging people's properties, and so on and so forth, interpersonal relationships. In the end of the Torah portion, beginning with the sixth reading, Shishi, this is in chapter 23, verse number 20. The verse says, "Behold, I will send a Hine anochi shaleach malach lefanecha." God promises an angel to go in front of Israel, in front of the Jewish people. For what purpose? The purpose of the angel going in front of them was l'shmarcha baderech, to guard you on the way up to the land of Israel. This is during the trek in the desert. Then to bring you to the place that I have prepared. So Hashem is saying, I will send an angel to accompany you. And Hashem and God warns the Jewish people. He instructs us, Yishamim mipanav, guard yourself. Shema b'kolo, listen to what the angel is saying. Al tamer bo, when he gives you instructions, do not rebel against him. Follow the orders. Kilo yisal l'pishachem, because he cannot forgive your sins. Because he's only an angel. He's an agent. He doesn't have that capacity. And the reason you should listen to him, kishmi b'kirba, because my name is in him, meaning he's acting on my behalf. So the angel is the one who will be taking them into the land. And then the verse continues, Kim shamoya tishma b'kolo, when you will listen to him. Rather, you should listen to the angel. V'asisa kol asher adaber, and you will do all that I command. Because again, the angel is not saying anything of his own. He's transmitting God's commandments. V'yafti esayvecha, I will therefore despise your enemies. V'tzarti es tzorerecha, and I will oppress your oppressors. In other words, all those who are trying to make trouble, God says, I will hate them, I will despise them, and I will oppress them. And I guess this is referring to all the enemies on the way to the land of Israel. Because the Jewish people had to pass through the various different countries. Like we know, they came by the land of Moab and Edom. And Edom, they had to go around, but these were the countries that they had to pass. Sichon and Og, the kings of the Amorites. So God had to oppress these forces in front of the Jewish people. He says, I will despise them. Now my angel will continue going in front of you. And he will bring you to the Amorite land, V'hachiti and the Hittite land, V'haprizi, and the Prizi land. See, the land of Israel was a land of 7 nations. The Knani and the Knani land, Hachivi, the Chivite, Vayavusi and the Yavusi land. V'hichachadetiv, and I will annihilate them. In other words, the angel will go and the angel will clear out, will wage the battles for you. God's angel will go and he will wage the battles against the inhabitants of the land. Then the verse continues to say, once you come into the land, being that this is a land full of idolaters, so you're going to find a land filled with foreign idols, statues, and the various different, we might say, temples that were built for all the foreign gods that they believed in, the pagan gods. Lo sishtachav el Eloheim, do not bow down to their gods. V'lo of them, do not serve them. V'lo isasek k'maseim, do not follow in their ways. Ki hares taharseim, instead of that, you should destroy them. V'shaber teshaver, and you should break matzavoseim, their matzeva. What's a matzeva? A matzeva is their altars, or what they call matzeva is called. A actual translation is what is a matzeva? There we go. They're stones. Yeah, a matzeva is like a stone that they erected for the gods, for their idols. So God is warning us not to serve the idols. And then he says, V'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem. Instead, you should serve your God. Uverech es lachemacha, and he will bless your bread, v'esmeimecha, and your waters. So the bread and the waters of the land are going to be blessed when you serve God. I will remove an illness from amongst you. God will remove all disease from amongst the people, from the land and from the people inhabiting their land. So what we have till now are 2 blessings. God is letting us know that an angel is going to accompany us. In other words, we're going in with divine assistance. And the angel is going to help, providing that we will listen to God's instructions, providing that we will fulfill the commandments that God is instructing us. We will have divine assistance in conquering the land. But then we are told that when we are in the land, we should rid the land from all the idols and so on and so forth. We should serve God, and then we will achieve incredible blessings of God in the land. And what do they consist of? Blessing our food supply, the bread and the water supply, and also removing all illness. So people will be able to live very healthy lives in the land of Israel. Then it says, continues, this is very, okay, we're going to stop mainly on this verse soon. Lo yisia mishakela, there will not be a woman who miscarries. You will not have any miscarriages. When women will become pregnant, they will see it through to a full-term pregnancy and give birth to healthy children. Rashi also says mishakela means a woman's whose children pass away young. So that will not be. Children will also, there won't be any, God forbid, any infancy fatalities. The young children will all grow up and be healthy and strong. Va'akara, there will also won't be any barren woman. So all women will be fertile and have children. So there won't be any of these, ba'artzecha, in your land, any women that miscarry and any barren woman. So there will be a great offspring and growth. So not only will you be physically healthy yourself, but people will be able to procreate in the healthiest way. And that's mispar yamecha amale, and that you will live long lives. The days of your life, the actual translation is the number of your days, I will fill them. So there won't be any early death amongst the people. So people will live long to a ripe old age. Incredible blessings. And then it continues to talk about the driving out of the enemy from the land. The original inhabitants who were living there initially, God is going to assist in chasing them away. So you won't have any problems with them. That's what continues. The verse continues. Esaimasi ashalach lefanecha. My fear, my dread, I will send before you. A divine dread will be accompanying the Jewish people and will go in front of them. And I will confuse the land, the people that you are coming into their land. I will cause your enemies to run away from you, so you will be facing their necks, their backs. In other words, instead of encountering them facing you head face to face because they're coming out to attack you, they're going to be on the run. So when you're going to be meeting them, you're going to be seeing their backs, not their front, because they're running away. Now, to assist in this, v'shalachti esatzira, God says, I'm going to send these special types of killer bees, lefanecha, before you, v'gersha, and it's going to assist in the driving out of the enemy out of the land. Esachivi v'esaknani v'esachiti mulfanecha. The Chivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites from before you are going to be driven out by these killer bees. What did these killer bees do? They stung them, but also I think Rashi says it hit them in the eyes, but its sting was fatal. It's interesting that it went straight to their eyes. Stung them in the eyes, and that's okay. And it's interesting how Rashi adds that this killer bee did not even go into the land. They stood on the outside of the land and they shot their stingers across the Jordan River. So it was like a long-range missile. Hashem sent these bees. And then it continues, I will not drive them out in 1 year. I'll drive them out slowly because you need to first populate enough to be able to fill the whole land. It will be a little bit of a slower process for your benefit. That's basically the blessings over here. And then the promise is, now you'll get to see where the real phrase comes from. Take a deep breath. Very important. For all those who want to know where the phrase comes from, it will be a good thing for people to learn actually where the phrase comes from. The original phrase, chapter 23 in Exodus, verse 31, the word of God. Vishati eskavulcha, I will place and I will put your boundaries, your borders. Miyamsuf, from the sea. Ad Yam Pelishtim, to the other sea, the Pelishtim. Umi Midbar, from the desert, Ad Anor, until the river. Euphrates River. From the river to the sea. That's God's promise of the land that He's given to the Jewish people. Sorry, Palestinians. It doesn't say free Palestine. It says, I will give this land, ki etem biyetchem, I will give into your hands, as yoshvei haaretz, those who dwell in the land, v'geir shtamai mipanecha, I will drive them away from before you. Okay, I'm going to stop over here with all this information. So first of all, I would like to say, from here you see God is making all these promises, and it seems like it's not going to be easy to take possession of the land. And God promises it's going to be with divine assistance. And now we're standing 3,500 years later after these promises. The Jewish people came into the land 2 times, or actually 3 times. The first coming of the land was with Joshua after the exodus from Egypt. That was the first time the Jewish people as a people came into the land and was given the land by God. And over here is where God promises them all this divine assistance. They were there for about, let's say, about 850 years, I think, until the people were driven out of the land by Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, Iraq. 70 years later, they returned, rebuilt the second temple, were in the land for another 420 years, and then they went to exile. And that's our exile that we're here now. But we are promised again and again and again about the ingathering of the exiles, that the Jewish people are going to return to the land. And just like over there, the first time we came into the land, it was with divine assistance. the taking of the land currently will also be with divine assistance. Now we're seeing so much, we saw the divine assistance by the 6-Day War, by the Yom Kippur War. We saw the extraordinary, incredible godly miracles. We saw the godly miracles by the War of Independence of 48. But yet the greatest divine assistance is going to come now, momentarily, when the entire world turns their backs on Israel. Today in the United States, the Congress wanted to vote for a package of financial assistance to the land of Israel. I'll make something very clear. But this is the absolute truth. Israel is not dependent on the United States, not for a nickel and not for a dime. Israel's support and strength comes from God, from no one else. The United States has a merit, the greatest merit that they can have, which would bring the United States infinite blessing if they are the channel through which Israel gets its blessings. But let's not think for 1 second that if the United States pulls the plug on support of Israel, Israel will collapse. The question is not on Israel. The question is on the United States. The United States does not have the divine promise. Israel does have the divine promise. The biggest blessing for America, and most, at least conservatives in the United States, religious people, know that. And therefore today they wanted to give $17 billion of assistance to Israel in aid and military aid. But it was voted down in the House today. A shame. But let it be known to the entire world that Israel doesn't lose anything because of this. Because this way or that way, the assistance to the land of Israel comes from God. The United States is blessed that it has the opportunity and the goodwill to help. And millions of people in this country care about Israel and want to help, and for that God blesses them. So, now that which we are now currently at the threshold of the final redemption and the final restoration of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, the building of the Holy Temple, these verses become very, very important verses. Israel should not flinch 1 minute. First of all, it's important for Israel's government that they should not cave into any pressure at all, to do anything that might harm them because they want to find favor in the eyes of the UN or in the eyes of President Biden or even in the eyes of the American public or even in the eyes of world opinion. Israel needs to do what's in their best interests for the safety of their citizens and for the safety of their soldiers who are fighting the most just and moral war ever to be fought since the creation of the world. They have the full justification to defend their families from brutal animals and murderers. And for them to go in there and fight this war and be told by the United States or by anybody else and lecture them on their morality, Israel should just say, we are going to do what we need to do. Thanks for your opinions and for whatever. 6 million of us were brutally murdered when the whole world stood by and didn't say a wink, didn't say a boo. And now we're going to fend for ourselves. If you want to help, great. Guess what? We welcome your help. We appreciate your help. We have tremendous gratitude for your help. But I want you to know that by you helping us, this is for your best interest. And if you don't help us, we're going to get our help anyways, as it says in all these verses. God is going to fight our battles for us. We don't need your sophisticated weapons. We can have these bees that God promised us are going to come. They work just as well as any of our sophisticated drones and weapons and anti-missile systems. We have angelic beings coming from above fighting for Israel and for the Jewish people. Our existence has been miraculous, and our existence will be miraculous forever and ever. It's of the United States' best interest to be able to help us. If you want to help us, great. But don't put terms and don't give me conditions because you need to because you need to be reelected, and you want to have the Muslim vote or whatever it is, and as a result of that, you want to God forbid cause any bit of danger for the Israeli military from doing what they need to do for their own safety of their own people. So that's important. But what we see over here is God promises his assistance. And this is something, this has to be the bedrock. What's more important is not even for the Gentiles to read this. What's more important is for the Jewish people to read this. And to be an absolute certainty that God's got our back. And when we have the strength and the attitude, then we don't become, then we don't have to cower to Blinken or whoever else comes over here and tries to lecture and try to tell us what to do. And threaten, God forbid, that if we don't comply, they're going to withhold the aid. This is very, very important. Okay. Now let's not make a mistake. This is this is crucial. When we see, what is this war all about? What was the war? What was the attack of October 7th all about? It's clear that the attack of October 7th was all about the subconscious awareness and understanding that any moment the Jewish people are going to take full possession of the land of Israel. Not the small land of Israel, the land of Israel from the river to the sea. That is in the subconscious of those who attacked. And as you probably seen the story, that the Hamas spokesman said, one of the primary reasons that they staged their horrific attack was because of all these red heifers that were showing up in Israel recently. In other words, they took note that the Temple Institute was bringing in red heifers, and that people in Texas and various different places were sending over these animals that were, why? Red heifers are needed for the rebuilding of the Jewish temple, in order for the ritual of the purification process, in order to be able to build the temple, in order to be able to serve Hashem, serve God in the temple, we need purification. The purification can only come through a ritual procedure that's done with the red heifer. When they saw the Jewish people bringing red heifers to the land of Israel, it was an alarming message to the terrorists that the Jewish people are really, really seriously thinking about rebuilding their temple and removing Al-Aqsa from the Temple Mount, which is really what needs to happen, because it's our temple, not their place. That's the truth. We were there thousands of years before, and the only reason they put their thing over there was because it is a holy place that once belonged to the Jewish people, and everybody knows that's where King Solomon's temple stood. That's where the second temple stood. And therefore, because they've seen or heard or sensed that is happening in the near future, it was for that reason that they staged this attack. So what we see clearly is that this is the final battle. This is the battle to stop the redemption from happening. This is the battle to stop the restoration of the land of Israel and the rebuilding of the temple and the messianic process from taking place. And therefore, these verses, going back to these verses of the divine promise of how God is going to assist, should be the guiding light to Israel and to the Jewish people. To know with absolute certainty, Hashem will be with us if we're strong and if we don't flinch and we have our emunah, our steadfast faith and trust in God, all will be good. Okay, that's an introduction to what we want to talk about. Now, what we really want to talk about today is as follows. Remember, I mentioned to you the verse where God says, there will not be lo yisia mishakela. That's actually the beginning of the 7th reading. It would help if, for those who want to look inside. So the verse says, let's read the verse again. This is chapter 23 in Exodus, verse number 26. Lo yisia mishakela, there will not be a woman who miscarries, v'akara, and a barren woman, v'artzecha, in your land. Es mispar yomecha amale, the number of your days I will fill. Shavi, this is the 7th reading in Parshas Mishpatim. Okay. So Rashi, we're going to do a little bit of an analysis on Rashi, which is something we've used to do quite a few times, quite a while ago. We haven't done them in a while, but now we're going to do a little of a dissection of a Rashi. So when the Rashi, who is the great commentator on the Chumash, says, when God promises there will not be any mishakela, there won't be any miscarriage, any woman miscarrying or akara, Rashi says these words, Im taseh ritzaini, if you will do my will. So the promise that there will not be a woman who miscarries or a barren woman is contingent on the Jewish people following God's commandments. Im taseh ritzaini, if you do my will. So, whenever Rashi makes a comment, there is always a reason for his comment. What prompted Rashi to tell us over here that this promise, there will not be a barren woman amongst you, is if you will do my will? He's not explaining the verse, what it means. He explains that too, Mishakela. That's in the next Rashi. But why is it important to say that over here, if you will do my will? Rashi seems to be inserting that into the verse. He's putting a condition that doesn't say in the verse. In the verse it says there will not be a woman who miscarries. Rashi comes and Rashi says, providing you will do my will. So the commentators say, primarily the Maharal of Prague, in his Sefer Gur Aryeh, which is a book that the Maharal, Rabbi Yehuda Lowy, 16th century great rabbi of Prague, wrote on the Rashi. And over there he explains it as follows. He says, because if you look at all the blessings that were in the previous verses, which I mentioned earlier, I will send you the angel, and then so on and so forth. All these blessings are all contingent. It says, if you will listen to the angel and you'll hear all the words that I am speaking through him, and you will follow you will do the mitzvahs, you will do what I am commanding you, then I will chase away your enemies, I will hate them, I will destroy them, I will crush them, so on and so forth. And then it continues, when you will come into the land, do not serve their idols. Instead, serve God. And when you will serve God, I will bless your bread, I will bless your waters, and I will remove all illness. So those verses state God's blessing, but it's clear that those blessings are coming in response to our obedience, to our observance. It's related and dependent on the Jewish people serving God. However, this verse, the continuation verse, which is verse number 26, says, Lo yisia mishakela, there will not be a mishakela and akara in your land, seeming to imply by this verse, it seems to be saying it as a new thing, as a new statement. I'm bringing you to the land of Israel, so you should know, in the land of Israel, there will not be any miscarriages. There will not be any barren women. Everybody will have children, no babies will die young, everybody will be healthy, and so on and so forth. And it doesn't the verse does not require. It seems like it's an independent statement, standing alone, without any condition. It's an unconditional blessing. Therefore, Rashi comes to say that that you shouldn't make that mistake. And you shouldn't think that this is an unconditional blessing that is not dependent on anything. See, the earlier blessings were dependent on something. But this blessing, you might imply that it is what? It's unrelated to anything. It's just a blessing that will happen in the land of Israel no matter what. So therefore, Rashi says, no. This too, you have to realize, is dependent on our listening to God when we're in the land. When you will obey God's commandments, again, Rashi says, Im tasa ritzayni, if you do my will, then there won't be. Now, how does Rashi know that? If the verse seems to imply that this is an unconditional, why is Rashi trying to limit God's blessing? In a sense, it would be better that it's unconditional. No matter what, the blessing is there. How does Rashi know? Again, Rashi, who's making his comment and says this is only if you will do my will. How did Rashi know that this is only if we do his will? That the verse means only if you do his will. So they answer, the Maharal and some other commentators, they say very simple. Because we see there are women who miscarry. There were miscarriages in the land of Israel. And there were barren women in the land of Israel. The very fact that these things happened, if it would be a blanket statement that no matter what, the land of Israel is one that does not have any infancy death, there is no miscarriages, there's no barren women, then the facts are, at least, after Mashiach is a different story. But these verses are talking about when the Jewish people are going to come in immediately after Moses in the days of Joshua. It wasn't like there was no barren women in the land of Israel. It wasn't that there was no miscarriages. These things did happen. So therefore, we have to understand that this is a conditional blessing. When the Jewish people did follow God's commandments enough that it would satisfy this condition, if you're doing my will, doesn't mean everybody, every moment, but it means there's a general observance in the land by a majority of the people or whatever is necessary. If there is such a thing, then you'll have that blessing. This that we find that at times there were miscarriages, and it's because the blessing was not activated. And why was the blessing not activated? Because in those times the Jewish people were not fulfilling and not listening to God's commandment, as we know happened. As when we learn in Scripture, we see in the prophets and so on, it describes how there was so much disobedience and there was idolatry and other types of sin and so on and so forth. So these are all impediments on the blessing. But the blessing, that's what Rashi notifies over here, that it is dependent on Im tasa ritzayni, if we do the will. That's their explanation on this Rashi. The problem over here is, so the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe asks a question. He says it doesn't feel like that would be the explanation in the Rashi. Again, that Rashi is coming to negate the thought. We're trying to understand what was the thinking process that prompted Rashi to make this comment. We would have thought that what the blessing over here is without any preconditions, because that's the way the verse seems to imply. It doesn't say any condition, unlike the previous verse that does give a condition. It says, "Va'avadetem es Hashem Elokechem," you will serve God your God, then I will bless your bread. But in this verse, it just makes a blanket statement. Lo yisiyah mishakela, there won't be. It's just making a statement. So we might think it's an unconditional blessing. So Rashi is telling you that it's not an unconditional blessing. This is how they explain. The Rebbe says, it's hard to say that was Rashi's thought process for why he made that explanation, why he made this comment, because it's hard to say it would be hard for anybody to read that this blessing would be a free-for-all blessing, wouldn't be contingent on anything. Why would it be hard to say so? Because all the blessings before this are all talking about conditional. And in general, all the blessings in the Torah. If you go through the entire Torah where God gives blessings, God always says, listen to me and I will bless you. So to suddenly find over here a blessing that is unrelated to anything, and God says, no matter what, behave or misbehave, I'm giving you. And it's not impossible for God to do that. God has tremendous patience, and a lot of times God just gives blessings and blessings and blessings. But it doesn't mean it's unconditional. It means that one day God will deliver the bill. It's not like it's free. God wants us to earn. And those are the blessings in the entire Torah. To suddenly think that over here, because the Torah in the same verse did not put a condition, immediately we should have jumped for joy and say, hey, we got the blessing, we're not unconditional. We got a little loophole. We're gonna get the blessings no matter what. It's hard to say so. It's not, because it would seem to be inconsistent with the rest of the Torah. And even more so, why it's hard to believe so, the continued verses immediately after this, verse number 27, he says, my fear I will send before you, and I will bring a dread upon all the nations. I will bring a confusion on all the people, and I will send the bees. That's a continuation. The bees and the confusion that God will send. Those blessings, which come immediately after this verse, that will not be any barren woman amongst you, are a continuation to the conquest of the land that we spoke about earlier. Remember, in the beginning verses, we spoke about the conquest of the land, where it says, if you will listen to my commandments, I will send an angel before you, and I will I will oppress your oppressors. So this verse, there will not be a barren woman, is sandwiched, it's sandwiched between two parts of the same blessing, where God is promising divine assistance to conquer the land. In between them, we have this blessing. What's going to happen in the land? Now, since the other blessings, the blessings that I will send the bees, and I will send the confusion against your enemies, is the same content. It's the same blessing, like he said earlier. And the earlier blessings are contingent on the following of God's commandment. Like God says specifically, if you will listen to the angel who is giving you over what I want. So if so, that makes it even more clear that the blessing in the middle, that loisia meshakela, there will not be any barren woman, is not a standalone blessing where it's not contingent on anything. I hope I was clear to what I was saying. We have over here blessings A and blessings B. Blessings A are blessings regarding the conquest. So blessings A are in the first few verses. They continue in the last few verses. They're all blessings A. And there's blessing B. Blessing B is one verse over there that says you will not have any barren women amongst you. And in continuation to blessing B, it goes back to blessings number A without any interruption, as if it's one continued thing. And blessings A, we know, is dependent on observance, because in the beginning, those blessings are clearly stated as blessings that are based on a condition. If so, the mere positioning of this blessing as a sandwich, or sandwiched in between blessings A that are contingent on it, makes it very hard for one to argue that this is a blessing that is not dependent on any observance. Therefore, there is a commentator who says Give me a second. No. Okay. So let's try to find a possible other explanation for why Rashi makes this. What is Rashi telling us over here? So let me put it this way. Once we've already understood that there wouldn't be a reason for us to believe that this blessing would be an unconditional blessing, right? So then we need to understand. So then why then does Rashi have to put this comment that if you will do my will? So others try to explain the Re'em, Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, the intention of Rashi. It's amazing. Rashi lived about, I think, 1,000 years ago, 1,100 years ago, something like that. He wrote a commentary on all of Scripture and on all of the Talmud. But on his commentary, there are commentary on commentary on commentary to try to dissect every nuance of Rashi, of why he said and why he thought, and he's such a serious commentator that everybody is trying to explain him. So, another one of the greatest commentators on Rashi, Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, he says that the reason why Rashi makes this comment, if you will do my commandments, is because Rashi wants you to read verse number 26 in continuation to verse number 25. Meaning to say like this. In a verse number 25 it says, you will serve God your God. He will bless your bread. Ubeirach haslach l'mecha, he will bless your bread. Vesmeimecha, and your water. Vasiroisi machla, and he will remove, or God says, I will remove sickness from amongst you, all illness from amongst you. So Rashi wants you to read the next verse as a continuation. Loi siya mishakela, there will not be a barren woman, is a continuation to the previous verse. It's as if what Rashi is basically saying, you have to add a vav to the first word over here. Instead of reading it loisia mishakela, there will not be a barren woman, you're supposed to read it villo sia mishakela, and there won't be a barren woman. All we're doing is we're adding an and over here. Since the verse does not say the vav, the letter vav always means and. Since the letter vav is not stated over here, it would seem one can read it independently, like we're starting something new. So Rashi is telling you, no, you're not reading it, it's starting something new. You're supposed to read it like this. When you will serve God your God, He will bless your bread, your water, and remove all illnesses. And remember, we're putting in the word and, v'loisia mishakela, and there will not be a barren woman, v'akara b'artzecha. It's all one long blessing. And it's all dependent on the same condition, va'avadetem es Hashem Elokeichem. You will serve God your God. And that's what Rashi means when Rashi says, Loisia mishakela im tase ritzoni, if you will do my will. It would be as if Rashi is saying it's a continuation to the previous verse. Don't read it as something new, but read it as a continuation to the previous verse. Now, this understanding of the verse would be consistent then with Ibn Ezra, who's also a great, simple commentator on the Chumash. He reads Pasuk Chavav, verse 26, in continuation to the previous verse. And the same is Nachmanides, Ramban. They all read it as if it was one sentence. Even though it's a new verse, it even has a interruption. It's a new paragraph, not just a new verse. It's a new paragraph, seeming to imply like it's starting something new. They read it in a continuation. Nachmanides even adds, listen to the way Nachmanides reads this whole blessing. He says it's a continuation to what it says earlier, do not serve the idols. When you go into the land of Israel, you're going to be coming to a land, and you'll see all these pagan temples and idols, and maybe you'll get excited, and you'll realize and you will think to yourself that the early cultures who lived over here had special ways of worship, and these ways of worships in which they, let's understand, the earlier pagan cultures that served all these idols, it wasn't absolute rubbish. It wasn't absolute stupidity. When they were serving these forces, they were actually increasing their wealth in their mistaken understanding, because they had a great understanding in the spiritual channels, in the angelic channels, and in the constellations, and in the zodiac, and in the various different forces of the universe. And by offering and worshiping the various different powers, they thought to believe that this increased their material flow, because they were enhancing the flow of energy coming down. Now, is that true or is that not true? They were tapping into real powers, but these powers, the Torah taught us, that these powers don't really have independent power. They're all in the hands of God. And to the Jewish people, God said, I don't want you to speak to any of these powers because they don't have no say in the matter. I'm the only one you should turn to, because I am involved in every little sub-detail. But you can understand why it's very tempting. In other words, when a person is trying to increase their wealth, they're trying to increase their blessings, their affluence, or whatever it is, and you're coming into a country already where you have everything laid out to you. It's like all the research was done already. And these are all these various temples and gods and stuff, and then you can find even the manuals of how you draw down the blessing. You might be tempted to go after that. That's why God says, do not serve them. Instead, he says, serve me. And that's why God has to say, serve me, and I will bless your bread, I will bless your waters, and I will remove illness. Which, according to Nachmanides, hear the beauty of it. According to Nachmanides, means you'll have healthy food. Not only will you have abundance of food, you'll have healthy food. The food will be healthy. You'll have very healthy air. The air will be healthy. That has to do with the removing of all sicknesses. I will create a good atmosphere. I will create a healthy, non-polluted air in the land of Israel. So there will be a healthy air, healthy food. And therefore you'll all be and therefore people will be healthy people. Not only will you be healthy yourself, but you'll also be healthy in reproduction. So your reproduction abilities will be at their peak. And therefore there will not be both any barren women who can't ovulate and can't conceive. And then you won't have any weak people who, because of their weakness of their reproductive abilities, have miscarriages. So you won't have any of that. And this is all, so according to that, and you will live a long life. So we all understand how it's like one sentence. Serve God your God, and he will eliminate all of these problems. And that's the way Nachmanides sees it. Ibn Ezra also sees verse number 26 as a continuation to verse number 25. So comes Rebbe Eliyahu Mizrahi, the commentator on Rashi, and he says that's exactly what Rashi wants to say. What Rashi is telling you is the exact same point. What's the same point? Lo yisia mishakela, Rashi wants to tell you, do not read it as if it's a new beginning of a new subject. Read it as if it's a continuation, and therefore Rashi adds, Im tase ritzayni, if you do my will. Which will? that which was mentioned in the last verse, if you will serve God your God, that means doing his will, therefore you will not have all of this. That's Rebbe Eliyahu Mizrahi's explanation of why Rashi meant his comment. That's what Rashi wanted to direct our understanding, that we should link up this verse to the previous verse. The Rebbe, with his incredible clarity and clear eyes and incredible amazing analytical genius, says if that would be Rashi's intention, if that would have been Rashi's intention, then Rashi should have therefore used other words. He shouldn't have said, if you do my will. Rashi should have said, mechubar lemikra shalamayla. It is attached to the previous verse. Rashi a lot of times uses that. You should know that this verse is a continuation to the previous verse. Or he could have said, Rashi could have said, Loi siya meshakela. Rashi could have said, Kemoi, like viloi tia meshakela. It's as if it would have said viloi, and Rashi could have said, it's as if it would have said, and there won't be, and that's it. That would have been the explanation. Or, here's a third way Rashi could have said it. On the words, hear these words. On the words "Lo tia mishakela," there will not be any woman who is barren. Rashi could have said, "Im tavdun es Hashem," if you will serve God. Why would that be better? What does Rashi say? Im tase ritzayni, if you're doing my will. Rashi could have said something very similar. And he could have said, Im tavdun es Hashem, if you will serve God. Why would that have been better? Because that's the words that says in the last verse. Va'avadetem es Hashem Elokechem, you will serve God. So if Rashi wants to tell you that this verse is a continuation to last verse, he should have used the words that the Torah uses in last pasuk. If you will tavdun, if you will serve God your God, not the idols, but you will serve God your God, then these will happen. With all these three possibilities that I told you, all these above mentioned possible ways of saying it, using other words that Rashi does not use, he would have been much clearer that verse number 26 is a continuation to verse number 25. The fact that Rashi does not use that term and instead uses a new term, im tase ritzayni, if you will do my will, the Rebbe says, that tells me, hear this, let's see what the Rebbe is hearing in Rashi. The Rebbe says, that tells me that Rashi wants to say the exact opposite of Rebbe Eliyahu Mizrahi is telling us Rashi wants to say. It's telling us the exact opposite. Rashi's trying to tell you it's a new thing and it's not a continuation to last verse. It's not a continuation to last verse. The blessings in the last verse, which says, I will bless your bread, I will bless your water, and I will remove illnesses, that's dependent on you serving God your God. Like it says in the last verse. You're serving God your God, and then what? He will bless your bread, and he will bless your water, and I will remove illness from amongst you. And then end. Now the verse is starting something new. And the verse is saying that what? If you will do my will, which is not serving him, but more than serving him. There's one thing to serve him. There's another thing if you will do my will. If you will do my will, then what? The verse is saying something new. There will not be a miscarrying woman and an akara and a barren woman, ba'artzecha, in your land. This is something new. And that's why Rashi is not using the term, and Rashi doesn't say it's connected to the previous verse. He's trying to emphasize to you that it's not dependent on the previous verse. It doesn't mean it's a free blessing. Not only is it not a free blessing, it's actually, the price tag on this blessing is actually a higher price tag. The price tag on the previous blessings is that we don't serve idols. The price tag on this blessing is to do God's will. What Rashi is pointing to you that this is a higher blessing than we had before. What's the blessing over here that's greater to the previous blessing? And the point over here is as follows. So first let's understand that, let's explain for a moment, what does it mean you will serve God your God versus you will do my will. You will do God's will. Serving God, your God, in the context over here means that you will not follow the idols. Because it's a continuation to what it says earlier. When you will come into the land, do not bow down to their gods. Do not serve them. Do not do their ways. You should smash not only that, you should break and crush and destroy all their idolaters' places. All their places of idols. All their pagan statues and stuff like that. And instead, what should you do? Serve God your God. So the service over here doesn't mean compliance with all of God's mitzvahs. It just means you shouldn't have any other deity besides God. In other words, God is your God. You don't believe in your heart in anybody else. You pledge allegiance to God. That's the point. And that's already a source of blessing. What will that do? That will give you a very healthy land, prosperity, healthy bread. Bread and water means all drink and all food will be blessed. And the removal of illness. Just for that. Now we up it a couple of notches. If you will do my will, what does that mean? What does it mean if you will do my will? You will observe my commandments. It's more than just pledging allegiance not to have another God, but to be diligent in my commandment. Observing the commandments, all of God's commandments. It's like this differentiation of not serving idols versus serving the commandments is similar to when the sages say the difference between the first portion of the Shema and the second portion of the Shema. The first portion of the Shema, it says, is accept my kingship. And the second portion of the Shema is accept my commandments. And the first we have to accept him as a king, and then we have to accept his commandments. So a commandments means far more detailed observance. Kingship means, I don't believe in another God, I'm loyal to you, but I'm not necessarily paying attention to the details. God is saying, if you will pay attention to the details, then you'll keep my commandments. And that's the second blessing. Now, but here we got to ask the question, where does Rashi come up with that? In other words, you're right, as we said earlier, to believe that this is a blessing that there's no price to it. It's just a free blessing. We wouldn't say so because we don't find that in the rest of the Torah. In the rest of the Torah, God is saying, if you will follow in my statutes, you will do my mitzvot, I will bless you, and so on and so forth. We got that. But how do you know specifically this is referring to observance of commandments? Where did Rashi pull that from? It's not a continuation to the previous verse. So where does Rashi pull that out of the bag? If you will listen to my will. That's what he says. If you will listen, if you will do my will. Where does he pull that out from? The answer to that is, and again, we're still going to get to why this is such a big blessing. What's more in this verse than in the previous verse, that this requires a higher condition. But before we get there, how do we even know that that's the condition that needs to be met? That you'll follow my commandments? Well, the Rebbe says very simple. This verse 26, verse number 26, is a continuation to verse 22. In verse 22, Pasuk Chav Beis. See? In verse 22, after God says, I will send an angel amongst you, and he says, watch out, listen to his voice, do not rebel against him. Then Rashi continues, the verse continues, 22, Ki em shamoa tishma b'kolo, you should listen to what the angel says, v'asisa kol asher adaber, you will do everything that I will tell you. V'yafti esayvecha, then I will hate your enemies, v'tzarti, I will despise your enemies, v'tzarti esarerecha, I will oppress your oppressors. And then my angel will go in and so forth. So, that over there it states explicitly that God is asking of us what? To listen to everything that v'asisa, let's go back. Listen to his voice. V'asisa, you will do koil asher adaber, all that I will ask of you. That means observance of all the commandments. Now, as a promise to that, as a response to that, God promises, I will assist you in conquering the land. Right? Now, this blessing how do we know that this continues into the further blessings? Because the latter verses, and I pointed this out earlier, the latter verses when he says, the bees I will send, and I will send my fear, I will send my dread ahead of you to confuse the enemy, and I will send the bees over to sting them. Those verses are all the same subject. In other words, we have one long conversation over here where God is talking about, if you will listen to my commandments, I will send my angel in, and he will take care, he will get you into the land with divine assistance, and you'll have all these blessings, including the bees that will come. So you see that this is an umbrella, this is the subject here. If you will listen to God, and you will do all of his commandments, then I will give you all these blessings. So this whole portion over here is all under the umbrella of what? Conditioned that we will listen to God's commands. But hold it, didn't we say there was a few verses over here where all was required that we don't serve idols? In the middle. Remember? We just said, when it says you will serve God, your God, I will bless your bread. Remember verse 25. When it says you will serve God, your God, and I will bless your bread and I will bless your water. We said over there it's only talking about not serving the idol. Yeah. We have to read these three verses as if they would be in parentheses. This is a parenthetical thing. Why? God says the angel will bring you into the land. When you will come into the land, what will you see? You'll see the gods that are there. That's what it's, and again, in verse 24, let's look inside. Verse Chav Dalet, 24. What does it say? Do not bow down to their gods. Do not serve them. Do not do like their actions. Instead, you should destroy them. So this is a parenthesis. Again, hear this well. This is a parenthesis. Since I mentioned to you that we're going into the land, so God stops a moment and he says, you're going into the land. Over there, you're going to have all the idols. Be careful. Do not go after them. And you're getting scared about that because you might be tempted because of all the blessings you get by going out of that. Forget about that. Just serve me. I'll give you whatever the idols promised, whatever the competition promised, I'll provide much better. If you might say, so-called competition is promising, I'm going to provide. It's all parenthetical. So those verses are parentheses. Now we're going back, but verse 26, now let's go back to our verse. The reason it doesn't say it with a vav, viloi, because this is no more part of the parentheses. The parentheses are over. Now we're going back to the earlier promise. If you will follow all my commandments that I command you, then these are the promises I'm telling you now specifically that are going to happen. And what is that? There won't be any barren women amongst you. There won't be any miscarriages. You'll live a very long life. And I will continue chasing the enemy out of the land through the bees and so on and so forth. So now we already see the context. We know where we get the idea, where Rashi got the idea that we're talking about a contingency on observance of the commandments. Because this is what the Rebbe always does. He's so great. He's able to zoom in and zoom out. And here is one of the cool things of zooming out. He steps out a little bit and looks at the entire context. If you look at the verses before and the verse after, you see that this is one promise that he's going to send his angel in, he's going to chase in the land and so on. And that's contingent on what? On observing the commandments. Included in that blessing is this particular blessing about the land being with, not having any loss of life, and the young and the people being able. In parentheses, as we mentioned earlier, there was a discussion about not following the gods, and God says the little benefits that you thought you will get by following the gods, that I got you covered for. By not serving the gods and staying aligned with me, I take care of that. But if you want the extra blessings, you got to follow all my commandments. Now, what is the big blessing in this pasuk? What is such a big blessing over here? I mean, the last blessing, he says already, I'm blessing your bread, I'm blessing your water, and I'm removing illness. That seems to be a lesser price that you get for just not serving the idols. If you just accept my kingship, even if you don't accept my commandments, you're already good for that. Now, there's a bigger blessing, there won't be any mission. So the Rebbe learns. The key word over here is the word Loisia Meshakela. There will not be a miscarrying woman. Va'akara, and barren women will not be. Here is the very important word. Be'artzecha, in your land. What does that mean? The commentators ask the question. What is it mentioned over here, in your land? What does it have to mention? It seems to imply that this blessing is only in the land of Israel. That means that outside of the land of Israel, even if we do God's will, not necessarily there won't be any, that no one will be childless. Not necessary. Let's compare it to the previous verse. In the previous verse it says, if you will serve God your God, I will bless your bread, I will bless your water, I will remove illness. So in the previous verse, when it promises you all those things, it doesn't say in your land. I will bless your bread in your land. I will bless your water in your land. No one will be sick be'artzecha, in your land. Because we understand that if you're serving God and you happen not to live in the land of Israel, you'll still be blessed. In this verse, it mentions that this blessing will be in your land. Why does it say that? By the way, and this is what I remember earlier, I started saying something and I blanked out and this is what I was looking for. It was a little piece of the puzzle that I forgot. There are commentators that say that the reason why Rashi has to say that it's dependent on us observing the commandments, why would we think that this is a free blessing? They actually say it's because it says the word in your land. Implying if it would be because we're serving God, then the blessing should come anywhere. It's implying that the blessing is part of the land of Israel no matter what. The reason why it mentions the land is to say the land of Israel is such a blessed land that in this land there's no miscarriages. In this land there's no barren women. And that's the reason why only in this blessing does it say in your land. And that's why Rashi thought, according to those opinions, according to that explanation, the reason why Rashi thought that we would think it's a free blessing, and Rashi has to say it's not a free blessing, is exactly because of this. Because if you're already following God's commandment and God wants to bless you, so who cares if you're in the land? Wherever you are, if you're living in Australia, you also have the same blessing. Wherever you are, across the world, if you're following God's commandment, He will bless you. Oh, but if this is a free blessing, it's independent of any service of God. So we can understand, why do you merit this blessing? Because you're living in the land of Israel. And the land of Israel is such a land that doesn't have any miscarriages happening in it. And that's why those commentaries say, that's why Rashi had to say, no, that too is also dependent. Yeah, it's true, it's in the land of Israel, but when? Only if you're following God's commandments. Okay, that was their explanation. But now the Rebbe, according to his explanation that we're learning now, that actually that Rashi is not trying to tell you that we think we would get a free blessing. According to the Rebbe's interpretation over here, what Rashi is trying to negate is you shouldn't think that this blessing you have to pay a lesser price for it, which is what? Just not serve idols. So Rashi wants to say, no. For this blessing, it costs a little more. You have to keep all the commandments. For this blessing, you have to keep all the commandments. Why do you have to keep all the commandments? What's so phenomenal about this blessing? The answer is, hear this. The answer is because it says in your land. And what does it mean? The land is not coming to minimize over here. It's coming, that means only in your land. It's coming to expand. And what's the expansion? It's saying like this. All the other blessings that we've had till now are personal blessings that are coming to the people that are observing. When you're doing what you're expected to do, you will get a blessing. What's your blessing? Your bread, your water, your home will have good air, and you will be living you will be healthy. It's a personal blessing. This blessing is a higher blessing. What's this blessing? This blessing is that when you will do the commandments, the entire land will be blessed. What does that mean? The land itself will become a land. The land of Israel will become a land where there is no miscarriages. Not a blessing to the people, a blessing to the entire land. That means the nature of the land of Israel is going to be different than the nature of other land. In all other countries, there is a certain percentage of pregnancies that don't last. A certain percentage of women that are born with, for whatever reason, that don't have the ability to have children. A certain percentage amongst the population, and every population. In every population, there are a certain percentage, if you might say, of non-childbearing women. There's also a certain no matter which population you'll go to, no matter which people in which country you will go to, I'm sure you can do it. You can do a Google search on it and put in percentages. Each country, what's their percentage of miscarriages, or what's the percentage of, and I'm sure it'll be different. Because people are different types of people, and there's always a. So the verse is saying Israel is going to be very unique. The land of Israel is going to be such a land that in their land, in this land, there won't be any. You'll have zero miscarriages. You'll have zero barren women. And it's not a blessing to the people. It's a blessing that has to do with the land itself. The nature of the land will be such a land that its people are so healthy that everybody will have healthy children. This is, and that's the meaning of the word ba'artsecha. in your land. And that's what makes this blessing bigger than in the last verse. In the last verse. In the last verse where the price tag was not serving idols, what was the blessing? The blessing was to each individual. When you are not served, God says, don't serve the idols, serve me. And when you will serve me, I will bless you, your water, your bread, and I will remove illness. But that's an individual blessing to those that are observant, to those that are not serving the idols and serving God. It's not a blessing that for the land itself. Now God is saying that what? And it's a new verse. I will also bless the land of Israel, that the land will be a land that doesn't have any miscarriages. The land will be a land that doesn't have any barren woman. Whoa. So that's a much bigger blessing. That affects the entire country, not just those that are observing. For that, Rashi is saying, that requires, like we see in the more of an observance. Not just not serving idols, but as Rashi says, if you do my will. And again, that comes, and where do we see that this is dependent on if you do your will? That's what Rashi's saying in the beginning. That's what the verse is saying in the beginning. If you will listen to my will, I will send my angel in front of you. He will drive out the enemy. I will send the bees. I will send my this. And that's in the chasing away the bad stuff. And bringing in the good is I will make the land a supernatural land that you will, the statistics of the land is zero miscarriages, zero barren women. Everybody is childbearing, and you have an incredible population growth and growth of a family and development of your land. This requires a higher blessing. I'm sorry, this requires more than just, so that's the chiddush, that's the novelty in this verse. So and now, and you'll ask the question, hold it, so why is it only in the land of Israel? If you're already following the commandments, this can be to a person anywhere. The answer is, since this is going to be a blessing for the land, it has to be in the chosen land. In other words, when you're serving God in any other country, people individually can get blessed. But to bring such a blessing on the entire community and on the entire population, you have to do His will where? In the place that He designated for His will to be observed. In other words, God designated a certain place where the mitzvot, where collectively we should serve Him and do His mitzvot. Where should the Jewish people do His mitzvot? What was the divine wish? Was the land of Israel. So God is saying, when you will come into the land of Israel, and collectively in the promised land, you will do my commandments, you will have such a land that it will be completely different than the statistics of every country. Because in every country there's a certain percentage of child loss, if you might say, or not ability to have children. By you, children, the blessings of children will be in its perfection, and it will affect the entire land. And it's not going to be person by person. It's going to be a change in the nature of the entire country. That is only in your land. So the land, the word ba'artzecha over here in the land has a double meaning to it. Yes, it means only your land, not outside, but it also means to increase, not just to decrease. In that sense, it's coming to exclude everything else, but it's also coming to include. It's bringing the land into the blessing, which earlier we didn't have any blessings that blessed the land. The blessings until then were blessings that what? That blessed the observers, but not the land itself. And that's the high blessing that God sends to the land of Israel itself. Now we will also add one more very important distinction between this blessing, which, as we said before, has a higher price tag, and the previous blessing, which we said is a lesser price. In other words, just not serving idols and believing in God, rejecting idolatry, rejecting the pagan gods, and serving God is enough to bring the lesser blessing. There's another difference between the two. The other two, in the other blessings earlier, what does it say? When you will serve God, your God, ubeirach, and he will bless your bread. He will bless your water. So it uses the term a blessing. You will receive a divine blessing, which a divine blessing will bring you a whole lot of good. Everybody knows that a blessing, what's better than a blessing? But actually there is better than a blessing. And that is a divine promise. A promise is very different than a blessing. A blessing, even if it is a divine blessing, it's possible for it not to materialize. Because a blessing means that the power from above has been evoked. It's been shooken up. It's been released. But not necessarily is it going to come down fully and manifest in this world. Because there's all kinds of stuff that sometimes can get in the way. So even when you sent the check, even when the check has been sent, it's possible that the check will get lost. A promise is certified mail. It's sent in a way that you know without a question, and it's going to arrive. A blessing it's a blessing. It's a real blessing. If there will be problems, if a storm will come, and so on and so forth, then we'll block the blessing. That's why we find that when people went to tzaddikim, the great rabbis, to receive blessings, there is the regular person who comes for a blessing and asks for a blessing, and he leaves. He gets the Rebbe's blessing. He gets the tzaddik's blessing. He leaves. He goes home. He's skipping home. He's so happy he got the blessing. Then there are the very, 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 very stubborn ones who walk into the Rebbe and say, and the tzaddik gives a blessing, and they say, I want a promise. In Yiddish, in Hebrew, it's called ahavtacha. Avtacha means, I want you to tell me certainly that this will be. And many times a Rebbe, a tzaddik, would not give the promise. A blessing I can give, but I can't give you certification. That's the difference. In the previous verse it says, you will serve God your God, and he will bless your bread, and he will bless your water. But what does it say in this verse? It doesn't say God will bless you that you will have children. It just makes a very clear, certified promise. Loi tia mishakela be'artzecha. There will not be a miscarriage in your land, or a barren woman. It's stating the fact, and that's a far more powerful delivery of a divine blessing. Because as we said earlier, it's certified mail. For that, as we said before, in order to get certification on the blessings, it's needed on our end that we pay attention to the details of what God wants. It's not just enough that we are Jewish in our heart and we don't accept any other forms of worship. Is already paying attention to the detail. When we actualize God's will down to the finish line, to the final product, we get it done. It's not just, call me. It's like a person says to someone else, whenever you need me, call me. It's good. But much better is, do you need grocery shopping? Do you need me to pick something up at the supermarket for you? Can I bring you over, can I get you a tea? Can I? In other words, when you take it down to the details, you might get a yeah. Yeah, actually, that I need. Whatever you need, call me. Whatever a general commitment, it's leaving it in the air. But a particular, if I give you a list and I say, this, these are all things I can do for you. Or I can say, really, I mean it seriously. I mean any single thing you need, call me. I'm ready. I'm available for you 24/7, whatever you need. Tell me and I will do it. It's a different type of a commitment. That's a commitment to the details. And then it's an actualization. So in our case, that's what we're saying over here. If it's just a general acceptance of God as our God, then we get the blessings. We don't get the certified promise. But, as Rashi says, imtasa ritzaini, if you do the will, the commitment is down all the way down to the actual observance of the commandments, not just to the goodwill of being a subject, but to actually doing it, then the blessings of Hashem come down all the way to the finish line with absolute certainty, without a question. So, right now, what can we do for our brothers and sisters in Israel, in which we need already to activate these crazy good blessings? Let's say that included in the not having a barren woman or not having a woman lose her children should be all the mothers and fathers that so are waiting for their children to come on home from Gaza, from the front. All the mothers and fathers that soldiers are out fighting this defensive war against Amalek. And that the ultimate blessing, see, Israel is going to be the most blessed country. But let's not forget, from the blessings of Israel will come blessings to the entire world. What could we do to hasten that? What can we do to increase that? Every single one of us. A little bit more listening to his will. Especially those that live in the land of Israel. Like we said over here, those that live in the land of Israel, who merited to live in the land of Israel and could do mitzvahs, you're making a world of a difference. Because the observance of the mitzvahs in the land of Israel changes the nature of the land itself, like God promised. But I'm sure in as much as our hearts are with our brothers in Israel, and the fact that we are really, as Jews, all one organism, we're one entity. So by them being in Israel and we being their extensions over here, when we do the will of God in the best we can in our mitzvahs, I'm sure it has its effect, at least for the Jews in the land of Israel, to have these blessings that we're talking about. And very soon all of us move on over there, from the river to the sea, as we mentioned earlier. And the promised land that God gave us with all these amazing blessings is fully materialized to its fullest with all of its blessings. And we live the ultimate blessed life. Of love and peace and harmony and good health with everlasting joy. And let it be today.